Happy ISAD to everybody, and welcome to International Stuttering Awareness Day with the Irish Stammering Association. This is our lunchtime briefing and our first Stammering Pride event. So I'm delighted to have so many people here and looking forward to hearing our four speakers. So I'll hand over to Nora, and who is the person who stirs and Vice Chair of the ISA. So over to you, Nora.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. And yes, happy ISAD, everyone, International Stuttering Awareness Day. Today marks the last in a series of events that the ISA, the Irish Stammering Association, hosted for NSAD, National Stammering Awareness Day. And I'm truly delighted and excited, to be having an event on Stammering Pride, Bród Stadaireachta today. Really great to see you all. So what is Stammering Pride? Some of you might be wondering. We'll be exploring that from various angles today, but I might pose a kind of starter for now. So Stammering Pride is a way of thinking about stammering. Stammering Pride affirms stammering as, quote unquote, a different, legitimate, valuable way of speaking that can be respected and celebrated, not merely accepted or tolerated. Stammering Pride sees stammering as a difference, not a defect. So for some of you, and I know on the call we have people who stammer, we have speech and language therapists, we have allies, we might even have a few foes, but some of you might be intrigued by this idea, excited perhaps. For some of you, the feelings and the concept of Stammering Pride might resonate. I know some of you are familiar with the idea, some of you are champions. I know for some of you on the call, Stammering Pride represents a really important and overdue evolution in how we could all think about stammering. But the ISA is a broad church. We are open to and inclusive of people who think about stammering in all sorts of different ways. We all have our own unique experiences and perspectives on stammering. So some of you might be thinking, what is this? For some of you, Stammering Pride mightn't suit. Some of you might find it a bit jarring. Certainly for me, I remember even hearing those words together for the first time, Stammering Pride. I got quite a jolt. And we recognize that some of the ideas might be a bit challenging. However, however you may be thinking or feeling in relation to stammering and to Stammering Pride, we're really glad that you're here today to talk about this and to explore Stammering Pride with us. So while Stammering Pride isn't new, and we'll talk a bit more about that later, it's certainly kind of growing in momentum, and there's a global movement developing on Stammering Pride. Those familiar with this might have noticed that a lot of the voices are coming from the UK, from the US, at least in the English-speaking world. So a group of us came together at the beginning of the year, wanting to consider Stammering Pride from an Irish perspective, wanting to have and facilitate an Irish conversation on this. Mark, Penny, Edel, and myself, and you'll be hearing from Mark, Penny, and Edel today, We have been thinking and talking about this for months now, and we wanted to create a resource for the ISA. So we drafted an article, a bit of an introduction to Stammering Pride in the Irish context. And I'm delighted to say that that article is now available on the ISA website. Thank you, Mark, for sharing the link there in the chat, which hopefully you can all see. And we would really encourage you to have a look at the article, and to share it near and far with people who stammer, with allies, with speech and language therapists. So with that, I might ask Mark to share the slides. Thanks a million. So yeah, Stammering Pride, Bród Stadaireachta. We'll be kind of going through and elaborating a bit on the main ideas of this today. A short bit of housekeeping. We don't want to keep you much longer than 2 p.m. We have a very carefully timed hour planned, but we're talking about stammering and we're stammering. So let's see how the timing goes. We'll have a few audience polls for a bit of interaction during the presentation. So if you would all perhaps on your phones or on your computers, go to menti.com. We'll be telling you the codes, these codes to put in, the time to put them in to respond to the polls. We'll also share a direct link in the chat if that's easier. We would really love to hear what you think about Stammering Pride and to facilitate this discussion. So we will leave 10 minutes at the end. Hopefully it'll be enough for some discussion. There is, of course, no pressure to speak, but if you would like to, please get my attention by raising your hand, and we'll invite you to unmute your microphone. You may prefer to send questions or comments, observations through by the chat function. If so, please do. You could send them send them to everyone in the chat, or you could send them directly to me, and I can read them out without your name if you would prefer. Like I mentioned about the recording, we're recording now. We're hoping to share the presentation part of this webinar on, but we will be stopping the recording before the discussion portion of today. And maybe just a flag at this stage, but we'll come back to it a little bit later on, that Mark, Penny, Edel and myself are establishing an ISA discussion group on Stammering Pride. Our first meeting will be on the 22nd of November. All are very welcome to come. We'll kind of share maybe some resources in advance, some kind of questions and prompts for discussion, and then see how it goes. We'll share the Eventbrite registration link in the chat for that. So without further ado, if we move on to the next slide, we'll see our other speakers today, and I'll hand over to them to introduce themselves as well.
Hi, I'm Edel O'Dea. I'm a speech and language therapist, and I've been learning from collaborating with Nora and Mark and Penny. I've been learning and listening and do my best to become an ally of the Stammering Pride movement in Ireland. And I'm really looking forward to the ongoing conversations, because for me, it's just a wonderful experience. I think it enriches me personally as well as professionally and in every sphere of my life.
Thanks, Dale. Hi, everybody. I'm Penny Farrell. I am an ally and a speech and language therapist. I was born in the north of England, grew up in the south of England, but I have lived in Ireland for 18 years. So I'm here representing from Lanesborough, so Longford, Roscommon, Abu. I'm representing the Midlands. Yeah, I'm excited to be here today and to have been part of the beginning of talks about Stammering Pride.
Thank you, Penny. I'm Mark Noonan. Can you hear me okay? Great. So I'm a person who stutters, and I live in Kildare with my wonderful wife, Liz. I'm obligated to say that, but by the way. I think we're going to kick off as Nora said. We're going to begin our first poll, and so I will put the link to the poll into our chat if you can see that. But there are codes as well, so I'm just going to switch screen for a second. So people have already begun. So if you go to menti.com, and you can use this code here, or just follow the link that I put in the chat. So some people are already answering it, and we can see that. So thanks a lot. I'll just read out the question. So have you heard about Stammering Pride? And this is just to gauge where are we, what are things like generally in our audience. So your options are, what's Stammering Pride? Or I've heard a little bit about it, but I haven't looked into it. Another option is I've read some books or articles, and I'm familiar with the main ideas. And then there's also, I've been there, bought the t-shirt, I'm all about Stammering Pride. So we can see the results there. Has everyone got a chance to participate? There's a good few responses there. So bit of a spread, which is great, and good bit of knowledge about Stammering Pride. So that's great, and that kind of informs where we go from here. And so I'll just flip back to our slides, and then we're going to start off with just laying the groundwork, and Nora kicked off on this really well. And so I'm just going to talk for a minute about what is Stammering Pride, and really Nora said it really well. So just to recap, so Stammering Pride is a way of thinking about stammering. It affirms stammering as a different, legitimate, and valuable way of speaking. And it sees stammering as a difference, not a defect. So Stammering Pride challenges a prevailing narrative in society that stammering is bad, or that it should be hidden, or that it needs to be fixed. And instead, Stammering Pride offers a vision of stammering as something natural that can be respected and valued and even celebrated. And so some examples of Stammering Pride, and we're going to expand on these later, but are stammering openly with your colleagues, your friends, your family, and talking about stammering with the people in your life, and recognizing positive contributions stammering makes to you and to others. And this is known as stammering gain. So I'm going to hand over. I think it's Edel next about what the origins of Stammering Pride.
Yeah. Hi. I hope everybody can hear me. I'm just checking my Zoom here. Yeah, my camera's on, sorry.
I can hear you fine, yeah.
Great, thank you. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about the history of the social model, which is where Stammering Pride originated. And just for the purpose of this short explanation of where the social model perspective of stammering comes from, I'll be using the terms disability and impairment as they are used in the social model. And I just want to acknowledge before I begin that everybody agrees that there's many valid ways to describe stammering, and that each is unique to the person who uses that word and how they choose to describe it. But it's just for the purpose of providing that background history to the origins of the social model of disability. So the social model of disability has its roots in the disability rights movements of the late 1960s and 1970s. And the dominant way of thinking about disability at this time was the medical model, which is a useful and valid model within our society in many contexts, such as medical treatment for cancer and surgery, where we rely on the expertise of clinicians to cure or improve illnesses and medical conditions. When applied to disability, the medical model didn't look beyond the physical condition of the person with a disability, nor the limits of the medical treatments available to treat or cure the physical impairment of the person concerned. So the predominant medical model led to people with a disability being confined by their physical condition to a limited number of physical settings and a limited set of life opportunities. It perpetuated not just physical, but attitudinal barriers, so that people with disabilities were seen to be pitied and patronized, often unintentionally, by the very charities that were set up to cater for their needs as part of the culture at the time. So the actual term, the social model of disability, was coined by the late Emeritus Professor of Disability Studies, Mike Oliver, over 40 years ago. And Mike himself has a very compelling story. He experienced a swimming accident as an 18-year-old, which left him triplegic. He had the lived experience of navigating a very constraining world of the 1960s and 70s as a wheelchair user. So the social model described what was a radical set of ideas 40 years ago. It used the word impairment to describe the inherent physical difference or variability inherent to a person, but it attributed the disability that person experiences to factors that are external to the person and imposed by a society and environment that is designed for the majority of people who are, in inverted commas, able-bodied, and ignores the needs of minorities with inherent variations, differences, and impairments. So for instance, Mike Oliver himself, who was triplegic and a wheelchair user following his accident, was confined to his parents' home for the first 2 years following his discharge from rehab. And he had to abandon his first attempt to attend a university course as there were too many physical barriers to him navigating the physical environment in that university. The disability rights movement and Mike Oliver's development of the social model has led to a public consciousness of the need to change the world that people with different forms of impairments and variations must navigate. It has resulted in equality legislation across the world, such as the Disability Act, which, for instance, engineers and architects in training are familiar with, as all the designs they develop now must ensure accessibility for all. We see its impact all around us today from our experience, for instance, at pedestrian crossings, recruitment policies in large corporations, and even all the recent NPHET and government press conferences where we see a sign language user translating the spoken word into sign. Mike wrote shortly before his death in 2019 that he always saw the social model as a device to help people with disabilities to make sense of what was happening to them individually or collectively, and a tool to help them to overcome the barriers that they were facing, regardless of what kind of impairment, variation, or difference they had. In the early 1990s, he used the example of stammering to highlight the relevance of the social model to all sorts of differences and variations. There were some early initiatives around this time in the early 1990s to apply the social model to stammering. And with the advent of the internet, social media, and 21st century communications, there's been a revival in the interest in the social model and a new wave of energy and focus on exploring this model in relation to stammering. There's been an enormous breadth and depth of inquiry and also activism around this cause internationally. In a nutshell, a social model perspective on stammering is about exploring, identifying, and dismantling the many disabling barriers that exist for people who stammer in a society which is dominated by ableist narratives and attitudes. From a voice-activated answering phone to speech therapy practices, even that prize fluency above all, to the invisibility of stammering due to the pressure on so many people who stammer to hide that part of their identity, and the lack of representation of stammered speech in so many spheres of society. These are some of the examples of barriers that exist for people who stammer. So from an Irish perspective, we want to acknowledge that we already have many fine examples of the social model being implemented in Ireland, such as Simon Walsh's interview on RT Radio 1 on Stammering Pride from 2015. Hi, Simon, congratulations on that. From such things as speech and language therapy initiatives such as Camp Dream Speak, which took place in Kerry, which creates a space for children to find their voice, and initiatives such as Free to Stutter, Free to Speak. So there are many, many more examples of good examples of what's already happening. And Penny is going to speak to us a little bit about the international initiatives.
You know the saying, there's an app for that. Well, there's a blog, a research paper, a TikTok video, a podcast, social media, groups, networks, videos. We picked out a few resources in our article, but really we just want to say that there's a community out there, and a very positive community out there. So look and see what's around and immerse yourself in all of those resources, and we'll hopefully start to create some Irish resources, more Irish resources as well.
Okay, great. We're just gonna take a little pause for thought, and we wanted to share, and we'll talk about this a little bit more later on. But we did want to share just some artwork, if I can find my my cursor. Some art, because stammering, in terms of Stammering Pride, is now being used in art, and there's an artist called
You can hear the music, Mark.
Oh, sorry. And can you hear me now? Okay.
Yes.
You can. You might explain what that beautiful song was.
Yeah. So it's just making the point about Stammering Pride and stammering in art, and there's an artist called JJJ Duran, and he's a person who stutters, and he uses stammering actually in his music, and that's a lovely song called Sparrow, by him, which is really nice as well. But we'll be talking more about stammering and art a little bit later on. So we're going to move on to talking about what can be the impact of stammering pride, and there's different ways to look at this. I mean, personally, since I've really connected with Stammering Pride in the last few years, I think the main thing for me has been relief, and relief to that I no longer see myself as being defective, and that actually I can take pride in my speech and in my communication, and pride in my difference. And I think Stammering Pride has actually helped me to feel more empathy with other people who stammer, and also with other people who have differences and other types of diversity. I think it's also opened up the idea of allies and stammering allies to me. I think Edel is going to talk a little bit about that later on. I think Penny, are you going to talk to us about how Stammering Pride influences speech therapy?
Yes, thank you. So this is a huge topic. There are a lot of knowledgeable, experienced voices who talk about this. I am one small, albeit enthusiastic voice. So this is just a snapshot really into my experience in learning about the social model. This year's NSAD theme is Speak the Change You Wish to See. And I already see lots of changes, and I hope that our talk today with our article and the upcoming discussion groups will see even more change. So for me, I went to a workshop a few years ago organised by 2 SLTs, and one of the speakers was a young man sharing his experiences of going to speech and language therapy as a child, and the messaging that he had taken on board with his experiences, and it changed everything I thought I knew and understood about stammering. Since then, I've looked to listen to more voices from the stammering community, and I want to represent some of what I've heard, that fluency can come at a cost. The effort to mask and hide, to avoid and to control speech was exhausting. The message taken on board was that stammering was a failure, not enough practice, not enough effort, that stammered speech was not acceptable or desirable or permissible. And to be honest, I was just really shocked. This is not what I intended. What, as a therapist, what is my ultimate goal? And my ultimate goal is for the individuals I work with to feel comfort, ease, and as much joy as possible in talking, and to feel confident and proud about themselves. So the social model in Stammering Pride considers the lived experiences as being the most meaningful, regardless of whether or how a person speaks or stammers. The social model looks to reduce blame and shame and stigma, and to champion each individual to speak authentically, for an individual to be proud about themselves without the conditional societal expectation of fluency. This model doesn't mean we don't do any work on speech. It means the focus shifts to talking with less tension, less fear, less effort, more spontaneity, and more ease. So these conversations have been going on for some time, as Nora, Mark, and Edel have mentioned. They're gaining more traction, but we think it's a great time to have more joint discussions about this in Ireland. So let's call out stigma, challenge narratives, and quash harmful stereotypes. As speech therapists, let's listen to the voices from the stammering community and listen to stammered speech. I'm not oblivious to the challenges of stammering. I hear them, but let's not contribute any more to that challenge. Instead, be a part of the conversation. Stammerers and allies together, providing as many opportunities as we can for more of the chat, the free, liberated, comfortable, easy, being authentically you chat. And so on that note, Edel is going to talk about advocacy and allyship. Thanks.
Edel, you're on mute. The phrase of the moment.
One sec.
There we go. We can
Thank you.
Hear you now.
Okay, so as Penny said a minute ago, it's quite difficult to capture in such a short space of time, you know, the scope and breadth of what it means, what advocacy and being an ally is all about. Advocacy is at the heart of the social model experience of stammering. As Mike Oliver advocated, we need to be willing to explore the attitudinal and environmental barriers in today's society that impact people who stammer, so that people who stammer can actually make sense of their whole experience. I acknowledge, you know, that this can be a really delicate and sometimes daunting conversation to explore the structural and attitudinal barriers that exist and which contribute to the layers of struggle, stigma, and avoidance that become part of the lived experience of stammering. But I think it is the most honest way to explore the experience and can lead eventually to a new and gently liberating experience, such as the kind of what Mark spoke about a short while ago, about the difference it has made to how he feels about his own speech and how he now feels proud of his own communication skills, and rightly so. So it is through such nuanced, trusting conversations where there's a strong sense of community and solidarity that a sense of release and a new enabling relationship with stammering can emerge. So while these delicate conversations with individuals and small groups can be some way liberating and make a difference to the perspective of those individuals, they still have to negotiate a world where barriers such as negative stereotypes and lack of representation of people who stammer in so many spheres exist. So advocacy and activism are needed to identify and dismantle societal barriers so that the younger generations of people who stammer coming up can have a totally different experience of stammering and being a person who stammers. Not everyone is in a place where they feel inclined to take on the challenge of advocacy, and that's okay. Advocacy is entirely for those people who have that energy and inclination, and their allies who wish to be in solidarity with people who stammer and stand with them. Advocacy can take on many forms. It can be about education, it can be educational and informative. It can be about making sure that stammering voices are heard and represented proportionately in as many spheres as possible, including the media. It can be about calling out frustrating and disabling practices, such as the use of voice automatic telephone answering services. Advocacy is carried out at many levels. It can be carried out by any individual going through their own life experience, and by celebrities who stammer and who are willing to share a story, not so much about overcoming their stammer, but overcoming the stigma, avoidance, behavior, and layers of struggle that they've experienced. And it's also something that can be carried out by organizations that encourage authenticity and diversity in their workplaces, including stammering. So again, we want to stress that no one is ever under any pressure to assume this role of advocate. But when one person makes a small act of advocacy or solidarity, there's a ripple effect. And we are influenced mostly not by what people tell us or by what we notice they do. So we're mostly influenced by what we notice people do. So a really good example of this ripple effect of advocacy is when a person who stammers and does so in a high stakes situation, such as an interview or at a presentation, when they use a confident and informative form of self-disclosure to flag with their listeners that they are a person who stammers, someone on that interview board or somebody listening to the presentation who may be desperately trying to hide their own stammer, or who may have a partner or child who stammers, may feel inspired by this small act of advocacy. Learning to be a speech therapist ally or advocate, I feel, is a great privilege. And I say it's a learning experience because that is what it's all about. We can only learn how to be an ally by being part of a shared community of people who stammer and their allies, where we create opportunities to have really honest conversations together, where we get a chance to listen to each other, and particularly where allies and speech and language therapists get an opportunity to really listen deeply to people who stammer. I'm going to share 2 links now that came out this week about how to be an ally in the chat. And I'm going to read out a couple of statements here from a document about what does it mean to be an ally of people who stutter that I'm going to share in the chat. So a stuttering ally is a fluent person who is in solidarity with their friends and family who stutter. Being in solidarity with people who stutter means not only valuing and respecting them as individuals, but also being willing to experience both joy and hurt with them. An ally is someone who goes above and beyond kindness. They are willing to stand with people who stutter, even when it may be difficult. So one of the good examples that they give is respect that each person who stutters has unique preferences and perspectives regarding their stuttering. Allies don't assume that people who stutter want to speak fluently. Allies recognize that people who stutter are the experts on their own stuttering experiences. Allies understand that it is the individual's choice to seek, accept, or decline speech therapy. Another example of being an ally is model how people unfamiliar with stuttering should respond to stuttering. For example, if a person stutters while ordering food at a restaurant with a group of friends, an ally would maintain eye contact until she has finished ordering to demonstrate to the server to do the same. So I'm just going to...
Or an ally might spend the whole of her hair appointment talking about Stammering Pride.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Go Penny, go Penny.
That's right.
Mark, are we over to you now on what can we do?
Great, yeah. Thanks, Edel. Thanks, Nora. Yeah. So, I mean, back to like sort of practical things. What can we do? So I mean, I think we've talked a lot about being open about stammering, and we've also talked about how everybody might be at their own stage and experience with how they feel about it. But I would encourage people when it feels right and when you feel safe to do so, to stammer more, or as I saw a long time ago, let the stammers out be seen in the sense of you got to see it to be it. And so when we stammer openly, it's not just for ourselves, but it's for other people as well.
Mark, should I say
Yeah.
my bit now? Thank you. My bit now. When we were thinking about what can we do, what really struck me was a phrase that I read in an article by Chris Constantino, and he said, think about what are your reasons for stammering. And that really struck me a lot, and I've been thinking a lot about that since. So I have a few of my reasons for stammering. One of my reasons for stammering is to desensitize the world around me to stammered speech, hoping it leads to change in attitudes. I think it's important to say that it's about desensitizing myself to stammered speech as well, challenging the deep-seated and long built-up urge in myself to pass as fluent, and chipping away at those internalized negative attitudes to stammering that we feel around us. Back to you, Mark, in the studio.
Thanks, Nora. Yeah, I think as well. I mean, one of the things that I've learned is that you can actually have fun while stammering, or have fun with stammering. And we saw JJJ Jerome earlier, but there's other examples of stammering in art. There's an artist in Britain, Paul Aston, and he paints. So he's a person who stammers, and he paints self-portraits of him stammering, and he paints other people who stammer as well, and captures what's called a stammering aesthetic. And there's also stammering in stand-up comedy. I've actually done some stammering stand-up comedy myself, and it was a lot of fun. And there's a really good stammering stand-up comedian in the US, Nina G. She's very funny too. Sorry, Nora, go ahead.
Thanks, Mark. I'm afraid my second reason for stammering isn't quite so fun as Mark's examples, but it was something that I read in an article or a chapter in a book called by Katie Bailey, and she talked about raising our own consciousness, becoming more aware of what is my struggle not to stammer, and what is my natural disfluency. So not so fun, Mark, but back to you.
Okay, yeah, I think we might go on to our final poll then, and so this is how do you feel about Stammering Pride, Bród Stadaireachta now? So I've got another poll, and I'm going to pop the link into our chat so you can follow that. And as well as that, if you're doing it on your phone or elsewhere, you can go to Menti, and the code is there, 533653.
You're able to select more than one, so we're mindful that you're probably not feeling just one thing, so you can pick as many as you like, or all of them.
And Penny did these wonderful gifts for that I get a kick out of. So the question is, how do you feel about Stammering Pride, Bród Stadaireachta now? So, and there's a range of different emotions. I probably run through several of them myself at times.
That was why we were sure to put in the multiple answer option. I mean, I'm at least five of those, and that's just today.
Yeah.
So thanks a lot, everybody, for your input there. It's good to see a good spread. Nobody feeling too overwhelmed yet. That's a good thing that we haven't overwhelmed our audience. So great. It's just an acknowledgement that like there are challenges here. So it's gonna we will cycle through different feelings with it. So I think we're on to our discussion. I think we're not doing too bad for time.